Good afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us today. We haven't officially started yet, but I wanted to say hello to those of you who are already here. Thanks for joining me today. If you're so inclined, let us know where you're dialing in from and what the weather like is in your area. It is a cloudy 41 degrees in Indianapolis, Indiana right now. So it's a little bit chilly. It feels like we are well underway for the fall weather. So I hope that if you enjoy the fall weather, that this is a happy time for you as well. If you're feeling a little chilly, I hope that maybe you have a cup of coffee or a cup of tea with you to keep you a little warm today. And we'll start in about 2 minutes. Sounds like sweater weather day in Tampa today. 59 degrees, very nice. Looks like sunny and cool in Cincinnati. Thanks for letting us know. 47 in St. Paul. 78 in California. Very nice. Someone is asking, will today's webinar be similar to the Modern Tips for Donor Acquisition webinar from June? Yes, it will be very similar. Awesome in Denver. Mid-coast of Maine, very windy. I hope you all are getting some good fall color out there in the Northeast. That's one of my favorite places to see fall color, but I'm sure it's lovely everywhere. All right, well, we are just about at 1 o'clock. We have a lot to cover today, and I want to give a lot of time for your questions later on. So we'll go ahead and get started. Not to worry for those of you who are just joining us, or maybe you need to hop off to a meeting a little bit after, this webinar is being recorded, and you will all get an email with a link to the recording and the slides. So we'll also be sharing some resources. I have a slide for resources at the very end. You'll get those as well, and those are all linked out to the resources we talk about today. So no worries there. All right, good afternoon. Welcome again to our Nonprofit Success webinar series. Today, we're going to learn about some modern tips for donor acquisition. This is only one webinar in our Nonprofit Success series, so keep an eye out for upcoming webinars, especially leading up to Giving Tuesday. My name is Diana Otero. I am with our product marketing team here at Bloomerang. Prior to Bloomerang, I volunteered as a hike leader, trail maintainer, as well as served on the board of the Nantahala Hiking Club, a nonprofit driven and powered by volunteers. My companion over here is Blossom. Maybe you've met her before, but she's our trusty mascot, and she's an orangutan. I've been with Bloomerang for over 7 years now, helping fundraisers and nonprofits like yourselves. Outside of work, I enjoy traveling, reading, and learning new things. Thank you again for joining us today. I hope you'll find some great information and inspiration in today's webinar. And as an additional thank you, we'd like to share this Buy Now, Pay in 2023 promo to everyone who's here with us today. For a limited time, when you buy Bloomerang, we'll delay your first payment until January 2023. This does expire October 31st, so I hope you take advantage of this offer. If you need more information, we've linked to that in the slides, which you'll get along with the recording of today's session. Today, we're going to take a look at the donor life cycle and where donor acquisition sits in that life cycle. We'll talk about why it's important to look at all the stages of the life cycle and have a holistic approach to your donor acquisition and retention strategy. We'll also take a look at some things you may want to consider when building a strategy for your donor acquisition, and of course, how to put that strategy into action. I'll give you a demo of Bloomerang and show you how you can put these tips into action using Bloomerang. I'll also share some resources that you can take a look at for further inspiration and learning. We hope that you take a lot from this webinar today and from these resources, and that you're able to apply them to your organization. Of course, we're always going to have some time for Q&A, so keep those questions coming. The concept of the donor life cycle, or you may have heard of it as the donor engagement life cycle, has been around for many years, and you may have seen different models that are being followed or being highlighted. Some view it as an actual life cycle, like a closed loop. A donor hears about the organization, they eventually give, and then they're cultivated and stewarded until they give again. That's a fairly condensed version, but that's the idea of the loop. From awareness to cultivation to gift, this is an extremely prominent model. Now, one oversight viewing the life cycle as circular is that a donor's path can branch out at many points. A donor can lapse, for one. Similarly, your nonprofit's goal isn't just to get them to give again and recycle the loop. Your goal is to get them to engage deeper with your organization, giving more year over year, becoming a recurring donor or a recurring giver, maybe even becoming a major giver or a planned giver. Another way to take a look at this is a continuous linear motion, and I'll refer back to this model later. Through the stages of engagement, newly acquired contacts should turn into first-time donors. These donors should be cultivated to increase interest, preventing opportunities to lapse. If you're a fan of the MTU, this kind of reminds me of the show Loki. There's several points here where the timelines might diverge, and you want to keep your contacts and your donors on that main timeline. You want to engage your constituents to become donors, engage one-time donors to become recurring donors, and as time goes on, donors should eventually elevate to giving more relative to their abilities, of course, and finally, truly advocating for your mission. I also want to point out that this is a line and that it can keep stretching. Perhaps you have a longer period of time between the stages, but it also stretches in either direction. So I like to think of it as a continuous motion wherein you want to keep that engagement going with your contacts, your constituents, and your donors. Keeping in mind that the goal is for constituents to become lifelong donors and advocates of your organization and your mission. Now let's take a look at the 3 stages of the donor life cycle. From the linear model, we see the 3 stages as donor acquisition, donor retention, and donor upgrade. Donor acquisition, of course, is collecting contacts to cultivate into donors and welcoming new donors into your organization. Acquisition could mean creating or getting new contacts into your database or your organization, and then they become donors, or activating the constituents in your database that may have never given before and turning them into first-time donors, thus starting that cycle of retaining and upgrading and lifelong giving. In terms of donor retention, this is about keeping your donors engaged to prevent them from lapsing and keeping the relationship and engagement with your organization ongoing. In terms of upgrades, you want to continue to steward your donors and keep those relationships going and inspire recurring or major givers, again, maybe even planned givers. This view of the donor life cycle breaks the stages down into the 3 sections centered around giving. You have your pre/early giving, you have your active/lapse givers, and then you have your upgraded or elevated givers. By analyzing these 3 stages of donations, it becomes clear, or at least clearer, who needs to be communicated with in order to grow your giving. Now, What problems can arise if you only focus on a particular stage? And I want you to just put that in the chat, whatever comes to your mind. What do you think would happen um, if you're only focusing on donor acquisition or only focusing on retention or only focusing on donor upgrade? I know we're focusing on acquisition today, but I want you to think about if you're only putting your efforts into one of these stages, what would be happening within your organization? Some great responses coming in. Missed opportunities, missed growth, donations become stagnant. Someone might give once and never again. Donors move on. Donors lose interest. Lack of growth, missing out on major gift, missed opportunities again. Donors get burnt out. Great responses coming in. Shrinking pipeline. I love this. Like all my plants at home, ignore some and the results are not desirable. All the time you spent to get donors is wasted because it's easier to keep a donor than get a new one. Not shrink crimes. Great responses here. I'm sure a lot of you are speaking from some experience on the fundraiser side and maybe even on the donor side. Now, not one of these stages tells the whole story. You know, if retention is the only part of the life cycle that you concentrate on, you'll end up eventually losing all your donors. I mean, we at Bloomerang are big proponents of donor retention, but if you're retaining donors, or if your retained donors become lifelong donors, that's fantastic. But they're only lifelong donors as well. At some point, that big constituency is going to begin to age out. And your donor database is going to be dramatically reduced because you've only focused on keeping your donors, not getting new ones. If you're not acquiring new donors, you're missing out on future growth and sustainability. Now, if you're only focused on, or if your biggest focus is on acquiring new donors, you'll spend a lot of your time and energy upfront only to get possibly that single gift. What if that gift is small? What if they never give again? With so much time and financial resources that go into fundraising, this is kind of a scary thought, right? It's in campaigns, it's important that you're getting a positive return on those efforts, and why it's important to make sure that donors give again, since a second gift actually costs you less than the first gift. Now, if you're only focusing on upgrading the donors you already have, sooner or later, your donors are going to get burnt out, and you might end up damaging that relationship that you so carefully built. You want to make sure that you're not losing your donors because you're burning them out and asking too much of them. Now, all that being said, our focus today is donor acquisition. And donor acquisition is the process of obtaining new donors or new contacts, new constituents through fundraising and marketing efforts. Before we dive in, I'd like to ask you all a question. So I am going to launch a poll here. And I want you to tell me, does your organization currently have a documented donor acquisition strategy? And I make an emphasis here on documented, because perhaps you have a strategy in place, and it is well documented, or maybe you have a strategy, but it's not well documented. Maybe it's only in one or two people's heads, and you might be in trouble if you lose those folks. We know that to staff turnover. So I want to make the distinction, does your organization currently have a documented donor acquisition strategy? Perhaps you have one that's well documented. Perhaps you have something that you loosely follow. Maybe you're working on building one right now. Or maybe you don't have one yet, but you want to have one and you're planning on it. Or you're not really there yet and you're not really sure when you're going to get there. Either way, that's okay. I also want to find out, do you know how many new donors you acquire year over year? So let us know if you've been tracking it for at least 3 years, or maybe you've just started tracking it, or you haven't started tracking it yet. And again, no matter where you are, no matter how you answer, thank you for being here. This is a wonderful start. It looks like so far, 39% of you don't have a documented strategy yet and are not sure when you might work on it. 25% don't have a plan yet, but are planning on it. 16% are actively working on building and documenting a plan. 11% have a strategy that you loosely follow, but is not well documented. Only 9% have a strategy that is well documented. So if you're feeling like you're a little bit behind because you don't have a plan yet, don't be afraid, or don't worry, you're not alone. This is a great first step to help you build that plan. And if you already have a plan in place, I hope you pick up a couple of tips that you can layer into your existing strategy. It also looks like we have 51% don't know how many new donors they acquire year over year, and an even split 25% for those who just started tracking it and those who have been tracking it for at least 3 years. I want to also make an important distinction between donors and contacts or constituents. Acquiring new donors is the ultimate goal. Once you can get someone to give, all those marketing efforts become worthwhile. And it should be easier to get them give again now that they're past that first gift barrier. But depending on where your contact or your constituent is, your goals are going to be different and the way you communicate with them is going to be different. If you're talking to contacts or constituents, you want to continue to introduce them to your organization, show them what impact you're making, and then nurture them toward that first gift. Once they become a donor, you want to continue to engage with them or continue to engage them with your organization to become lifelong donors and advocates. We could have a whole separate webinar just on acquiring new contacts, but we're going to focus on donor acquisition today, so getting them to that first gift. When you're building your donor acquisition strategy, I like to look at 3 things. There could be more, but this is where I recommend starting with. 1, you want to take a look at what are you measuring. You want to take a look at what is your contact acquisition rate right now, or maybe you want to take a look at your donor acquisition rate, maybe your donor conversion rate. What metric is most important and is going to be most helpful, most impactful for your organization? I also want to take a look at your different acquisition channels. How are we getting new donors? How are new dollars coming in? Is it campaign? We can take a look at events, campaigns. What sources are they coming in from? And then you want to start building your plan. Of course, you want to start setting SMART goals, and you want to create a cultivation plan for new contacts and donors. And very important, document everything. It's going to be easier to onboard new staff, and it's going to be easier when you have staff turnover. We know that a lot of you are small 1 to 2 person shops that wear multiple hats, and documenting these policies, documenting these strategies, these procedures might be lower on your list, but I would encourage you to bring that up higher. I know it's going to take time, but it's going to pay dividends in the long term. All of the slides that I'm showing you today, you will receive a copy of all of that. So when we share with you the cultivation plan, the resources, you'll get a copy of all of that. No worries. Now, in terms of metrics, there's a couple of different metrics you can take a look at. And again, these are some suggestions to help you decide what will be most helpful and most impactful for your organization. First is contact acquisition. At the very basic level, how many new contacts are you adding month over month or year over year? Have a conversation within your organization about your bandwidth, your appetite, and capability to track this. you can't act on it if you're not tracking the information. So is this something that you're going to be able to commit to tracking month over month, quarter over quarter, year over year? This might also be different depending on what activities you're doing throughout the year. If you have an annual event, for example, you might see a spike at that time of the year, and that can skew your averages. So keep those things in mind, and you'll see your natural ebbs and flows of when you might be acquiring new contacts. You can also take a look at donor acquisition. This to me is an important metric that can easily get overlooked. And by donor acquisition, I'm looking specifically at how long does it take for a new contact to become a first-time donor? Do you even know what that is for your organization right now? Is this where you want it to be? Knowing where you are now helps you set realistic goals for where you want to be. If you want to bring this duration down, shorter time to value, take a look at what activities you have between when they become a contact to when they become a donor. How can you condense that timeline? Or what activities can you include or take out? What activities can you focus on that will yield or that have yielded the best results and reduce that time to first gift? Now, for donor conversion, the simple formula here is contacts that became donors divided by total number of contacts times 100. So this takes a look at how effective are you at converting contacts or constituents into donors? What percentage of your contact list are actually donors and are actually giving to your organization? We have a slide of resources that can help guide you through what metric might be good for your organization and how you can apply it. Some of those resources talk about what's a good donor acquisition rate. I'm surprised no one's asked yet today. And while that's good to benchmark, I do want to caution you about metrics like that. Maybe, once you find that number, maybe you're already over that number, but you still want to improve. There are always rooms to improve. Or maybe you're not anywhere close to that number. And I don't want you to be discouraged. I want you to set realistic goals for your organization. And that's going to be key to your success. You don't want to be tied down just to that one number. You want to continuously improve on where you already are. Might be difficult in the beginning, but hopefully you'll see that improvement over time and you'll see those efforts pay off. Next, take a look at your acquisition channels. Here are a few fundraising and participation channels you can analyze for your donor and contact conversion rates. These are just samples. If there's something that you feel is important that's not on this list, especially if it's been successful for your organization, please feel free to put them in the chat. I see a question come in here. Is there an industry standard for donor retention? Fantastic question. Donor retention for the last 5 years, maybe even longer, sits between 40 and 45%. So I wouldn't call that as a standard, but that's the average that we're seeing right now. Now, if you break that down further, donor retention rate for new donors or for first-time donors sits at about 20%. Once you get them to that second gift, that jumps to about 60%. So that's why it averages about to 40 to 45. And that's why the work doesn't stop at acquisition. The work doesn't stop at that first gift. You want to extend that timeline and get them to that second gift, get them more invested in your mission, get them to be a lifelong donor and lifelong advocate. Great question. Now back to our acquisition channels. This is really about knowing your constituents and your donors and what resonates with them so you can budget your time on the most effective cultivation efforts. Where do your dollars come from? Which of these channels yields the best outcomes for your organization? And I say outcomes here, this might be different based on what your organization's goals are. Do you want to acquire new donors, new volunteers? Do you want an increase in dollars? Take a look at what your goals are. Take a look at what activity supports those goals. For events, for example, you can take a look at participation. You can take a look at, do you have team leaders? Do you take a look at events? Are there certain events that are better attended than others? Are there certain events where you get more dollars than others? Are there certain campaigns that yield better results for you? Are you seeing trends here? Where are the ups and downs? When can we do these campaigns? Which are the most effective? You can take a look at sources: in-person meetings, phone calls, events, direct mail, website advocacy. There isn't just one source that you can take a look at, but take a look at how does your organization acquire new donors. Now, it's one thing to take a look at what has worked for you in the past. It's also another thing to take a look at where might there be room to be creative and try something new, right? If you've been doing the same things over and over, and maybe you're seeing that it's slowing down a little bit, where are those ways where you can inject a little creativity and give your acquisition a little boost? We'll show you a couple of things that may be new for you, or we're seeing are newer to the industry, that you can layer into your strategy. Great point here as well from the chat. Are you looking at acquisition costs by target audience so you can be efficient in your selecting prospects? Wonderful. Add that into your strategy as well. We're all familiar with SMART goals, but sometimes in our busyness, it can be easy to forget. I like to remind myself as well. So this is always a good reminder when setting goals for your organization. Is it specific? Is the goal detailed enough to be useful? Is it measurable? When can you say that you've succeeded and you've met your goal? Is it attainable? Is the goal both ambitious and realistic? I like adding ambitious here because you want to push yourself a little bit and you want to do better than last time, but you want to be cautious and not be unrealistic. So it's finding a balance there is going to be key. Now, is this relevant? Does this goal directly relate to your nonprofit's mission, and can it support your mission? And of course, is it time-based? Is there a set deadline for achieving the goal? And when you're looking at the times as well, make sure you're setting milestones for yourself so that you're looking at smaller chunks that are less daunting and more manageable, as opposed to an overwhelming big goal that could span a longer amount of time. Of course, at the end of every campaign, once you've reached your goal, whether or not you reached your goal, you always want to take a look at what you learned and how you can make adjustments for next time. Here's a sample new donor cultivation timeline. And if you look back, or if you recall back to our linear model of the donor life cycle, imagine the new donor cultivation timeline stretching across on either side. So on the left side of the timeline, what are the activities that you want to do or that you can do so that you can get them to that first gift? And on the right side, what activities, what engagement opportunities can you take advantage of to turn those donors into lifelong advocates? And you don't need to reinvent the wheel either. You can replicate some of the ideas that we're showing you here. So some of the communication and engagement activities that you're already doing. For example, here we have a thank you note by mail or a thank you phone call after a first-time gift. So you can do that with your new contacts and new constituents as well. Instead of thanking them for making a donation, thank them for their interest or their involvement. Thank them for whatever it is that facilitated that introduction to your organization. I also love this opportunity to ask them what made them interested in your organization in the first place. What aspects or what aspects of the organization right now are they interested in? I love asking new constituents and new donors this, because you can really segment based on this and you can really personalize your approach for this constituent. We have a great question here in chat. Do phone calls still work? So many people now do not want to talk on the phone, and I'm worried this could be intrusive. If any of you have experience with phone calls, please feel free to chime in the chat as well. So far from our research, we have found that phone calls do yield good results. I'll link to a blog post, or I'll add it to the slides, where phone calls, especially within the first 48 hours, have been shown to increase the value of the next gift and decrease the time it takes to give the second gift. And they're actually more likely to give again if they receive a phone call within the first 48 hours. Now, granted, not everyone is going to pick up the phone, but it's shown that it's equally effective if you leave a voicemail just saying thank you, especially for something like this, where all you're doing is thanking them for the donation or for the gift, or again, for their involvement. You're not asking for anything. This is the best type of phone call to receive. And again, how nice is it for a donor to receive that voicemail, just thanking them for their gift or thanking them for their involvement. Now, I will also say, you, in the course of your cultivation and stewardship, will be getting to know your constituents very well. So it is worth your time to track, does your donor, does your constituent have a preferred channel? Maybe some like phone calls, maybe some don't. If you can keep track of that, then you can personalize how you communicate with your donors. I also wanted to share some of the answers here that weren't sent to everyone. Phone calls work. Even if they don't answer, leave a message. We call within a week, and even if it goes to voicemail, they call back and thank us for calling. We use video thank yous. We've found that this really works. Absolutely, yes. Add that into your timeline. Phone call results have been mixed. Responding in the first 48 hours could be part of the problem. So that's one of those ways where you can try to figure out, right? So who are the ones you gave a phone call to? Who did it work for? Who did it not? Keep track of that information so you know that preference moving forward. There's a question here. What are video thank yous? Great question. So there's a lot of software now, and Bloomerang integrates with a couple of them, where you can record a personalized video thank you on your phone and attach that to an email and send it over to the donor. So instead of just a thank you email, there's a video that goes along with it, and you can really personalize it. There's software now that allows you to do this at scale. I know that creating videos can be time intensive. So it allows you to scale up and do more of these. Great. Great suggestion here. Would be great if in Bloomerang, if you can survey preferred communication information and set it for the constituent. That's a great suggestion. We can track communication preferences within Bloomerang, but it's a great suggestion to send a survey out to your constituent and have that automatically set in your database. Thank you for that. Now, you may get a new constituent who becomes a donor after the first interaction, or someone else who becomes a donor after the third interaction, right? You have a couple of touch points here with the constituent. So the journey may look a little bit different for each constituent. And as we've pointed out, someone might respond to that phone call, and someone might respond to a note better. So the journey may look a little bit different for each constituent, but as you're refining your strategy and your tactics, I hope that you'll see that timeline contract when you're trying to get them to that first gift, and then stretch out infinitely as they become lifelong donors and advocates. Now, it's all well and good to talk about strategy, but how do you put this all into practice? Because that's what we're here for, right? We want all of these things to translate into results. I like to start with a solid foundation of data. You have a wealth of information that you already have. The key is, how can you report on that data? What insights does it tell you? And how is this actionable? We talked a lot about the different metrics you can take a look at and what questions and decisions you may need to talk about within your organization to help you build that plan. Start looking at your data and building these reports. If you're going to be focusing on new contact acquisition, for example, take a look at what is your contact acquisition rate right now? What are the channels that help you bring in those new contacts? If you're focusing on new donors, how long does it take for new contacts to become new donors? What are the different ways in which donors are, or a new donor might give? What are those channels? Where are the activities that help us turn new contacts into new donors? Take a look at what you already have, and you might be surprised at what it tells you. Take a look at what's working for you and take a look at where those gaps are. Another thing is invest in prospect research. We'll dig into this a little bit more. And particularly, I want to point out that you want to look at two major things: your wealth indicators and philanthropic indicators. And then we'll also dive into making the most of your CRM, and we'll jump into Bloomerang, and I'll show you some samples of how you can put that into practice using Bloomerang. In terms of prospect research, Bloomerang partners with Donor Search, a fantastic company. And what I love about them is they take a look at wealth indicators. Wealth indicators meaning this speaks to the prospects, the constituents' capacity to give. This is all based on publicly available data, including real estate ownership, stock holdings, business affiliations, even past political contributions. But this really speaks to their capacity to give. It also looks at their philanthropic indicators. Research shows that the best indicator of future giving is past giving. So this takes a look at their actual giving history. And these markers can indicate a prospect's affinity towards your mission too. Some indicators will include past donations to and involvement with similar nonprofit organizations, as well as personal information like hobbies and interests. And they package all of this into a neat little package called the generosity score within Bloomerang. So it goes from cool, cold, warm, hot, all the way to on fire. And again, it takes a look at those two factors, not just giving capacity, because a person might have high giving capacity, but if they've never, or if they haven't shown indicators being philanthropic before, what's the likelihood that they're going to give, even if they have that capacity? So it's important to take a look at those things. You can even layer in additional information like generosity details. So it can tell you what was their largest charitable gift? What is their wealth capacity? Do they have business affiliation? What's their likelihood for giving to an annual fund, or becoming a major gift donor? I also like to layer this in with, and we're kind of marrying this now into the how to make the most of your CRM as well, is to leverage your existing supporter base, right? Look for contacts who are engaged with your organization and haven't given yet, and pair this with information from your prospect research data. So don't look at the data in isolation, compare the data and see what it tells you. Great question here. Is Donor Search a pay-for site or a free site? Bloomerang has an integration with Donor Search. So this generosity score that you see here that I'm showing you, it's actually built into Bloomerang and it's free within Bloomerang. There is more that you can do for an additional fee, but at the basic level, for free, you're going to get the generosity score. I like pairing this with our engagement level. And if you're familiar with Bloomerang, you may have seen this on our website. They mirror each other, where it goes from cold, cool, warm, hot, and on fire. And I like comparing these two because just by comparing these two pieces of information can tell you or can give you a bit of insight into your constituents, right? What might it tell you? And feel free to jump in the chat. What might it tell you if you have a constituent who has a low engagement level but has a high generosity level? What could that tell you? If they have a low engagement level, so low engagement with your organization and high generosity level, what does this tell you about this constituent and how might you approach them? I love how this is worded danger. A high generosity, low engagement donor may soon realize they'd rather fund another org. We need to do some work to engage them. We're not hitting their hot buttons. The organization isn't focusing enough effort into the constituent. Maybe they're only a one-time giver. Exactly, right? If they have a high generosity level, they have a high capacity to give, and they have proven giving in the past. But if their engagement with your organization is low, that means they're probably giving somewhere, but not necessarily to your organization. So how can you tap into that to engage them more and perhaps as a natural consequence, give more? Or, hey, danger, we don't want to lose this donor. We don't want to lose this constituent because they do have the capacity to give. So what can we do to engage them? What have they given to in the past? And are you a good fit? I love that comment there as well. Yes, absolutely. Ask them, right? Now, what about if a donor has high engagement with your organization and lower generosity? Conversely, what if they're high engagement with your organization but low generosity? Yes, maybe they don't have high capacity to give, but whatever capacity to give, they're giving to your organization, right? They could be a valuable advocate for your organization, or maybe they don't have a lot of ability to give, but but they do engage with your organizations in other ways. Maybe they volunteer, and that's why their engagement is higher. So keep up the stewardship. I love this advice here. Keep the stewardship up to keep them for a long time. Yes, absolutely. Small gifts add up and word of mouth helps. Again, your ultimate goal is to build those lifelong advocates um, for your mission. And advocates doesn't necessarily mean they're giving a lot, but one key there, lifelong, and two, advocates. They're lifelong advocates for your mission. Or maybe you want to take a look at your donors who are engaged with your organization. They volunteer, they open your emails, but they haven't given yet. There's a lot of hidden gems in your database that you can uncover. You can also reactivate some lapsed donors. They've been engaged with your organization in the past and have given to your organization in the past. What can you do to engage them to give again? And we'll jump into Bloomerang here. I want to show you where you can see this engagement level. So you can see here, I have a constituent that is on fire and they have high generosity on their timeline as well. And I should clarify that engagement doesn't just measure giving. It takes a look at all the different activities as well that you do with this constituent. What do I do to engage them? Are we inviting them to events? Are they opening your emails? Are they volunteering? All of this factors into your engagement level. So this engagement level is specific to your organization, whereas the generosity score, it is their giving in general. And this is what it looks like to take a look at that constituent in Bloomerang. There is a button here that you can see. You can view more details in donor search. And again, that's details like that are an additional add-on that you can purchase once you have Bloomerang, but this generosity score is free. And you can report on all of this information. So if we're talking about reporting, there are a couple ways that Bloomerang makes this easy for you, because again, I like to say that reporting is the way that for you to make sense of the data that you have in your database. So we have some report templates that you can start with. For example, this already tells you donors with both a high engagement and a high generosity, right? So earlier we looked at a constituent that had both high engagement and high generosity. This could be prime candidates to ask for a good, someone mentioned here, plan giver or major giver. So you can go in here and take a look at this report. And right now it's looking at their engagement level is hot or on fire. That's the highest level, or generosity is hot and on fire. So you might see someone here, for example, that has a high engagement and low generosity, or vice versa, because we're looking at or. If you want to really look at, really high potential, if you want to slice that up further, you can drag this over. So it's looking at both categories and it will show you what your prospects look like. So I like playing around with the report as well, because based on the results that you're getting, you can start crafting your plan. Do we have enough folks to reach out if we're reaching out to this many? How can we automate, or what activities can we automate versus what activities need a more personal touch? And again, kind of looking at, and you can even take a look at this, for example, you can layer a lot of this in. For example, you can say generosity is hot or on fire, and they have no transactions, or they've never given. Let's see if we have any in my database. It looks like I have 7. I have 7 households within my pretend database where their generosity is hot and on fire. They have high capacity, and they have proven past philanthropic giving, but they haven't given to my organization yet. So I can dig in, I can click into each one of these constituents and find out what activities have I done currently to engage them, to get them to give. And if I'm not doing a lot of those activities, if I don't have a plan for engaging them, maybe it's not as surprising that they haven't given yet. So again, if you're able to run these reports in your database, which you are in Bloomerang, it gives you that little bit of information of, instead of just acquiring new contacts, tapping into who's already in your database that you haven't fully tapped into yet, or haven't realized the value of yet. We have a great comment here, or who knows them? Maybe, you can ask someone's help to build that relationship with the constituent, which we also have a relationship report, or a relationship report template that you can start from in Bloomerang as well. Now, right now, for example, this report template looks at employers, but you can specify that, show me someone who is a friend of this constituent that has high engagement, high generosity, but low engagement. Show me someone who is maybe a colleague, or maybe, yes, it's an employer. Maybe you can tap into that gift matching, for example. Any relationship that you want to track in Bloomerang, you can report on it. And again, leverage the information, leverage the constituents, the donors you already have. It doesn't cost any more because they're already in there in your database. So you want to track those relationships as well. And I love this too. We can have, again, a whole nother webinar on relationship reporting in Bloomerang. But yes, I mean, ultimately, fundraising is all about relationships. You want to manage, you want to, from cultivation to stewardship to, again, lifelong advocates. It's all about engagement and relationships. So going back here, leverage your existing supporter base, right? How can you turn supporters into fundraisers? How can you report on those relationships and build on that? Another thing you want to do, of course, is to segment and send personalized communications. Take a look at what channels are you planning on using? How often are you sending communications? What cadence do you have? Do you know if your contacts have a preferred channel and which channels are getting the best responses? You want to be able to report on this so you can maximize your efforts. Digital is great, but don't discount the traditional channels as well. I know we're talking about modern tips, but again, take a look at what's worked for your organization and how you can modernize that too. And also, how can you make digital communication personalized? It's very easy to send a mass email, but how can you still give it that personal feel for your donors? Some ideas around here are show potential donors how your nonprofit uses their donations or will use their donation. Thank them for the involvement and share what makes an impact on your mission. Share the direct impact that the donations can make. Share an engagement piece like a survey or petition. This gets your donors in the habit of interacting with your messages. So they're not just receiving information from you, they're interacting with you and with that information, which, think about things that will increase their knowledge and loyalty to your cause. Share a story that focuses on a need. The goal will be to move your donors' hearts and help them connect further with your organization and the work that you're doing. Another thing here, we have a great question that came in. What are some additional acquisition channels? My board said no events ever. They don't want to do direct mail because it is such a low return. Online giving platforms are huge. Research shows 54% of donors give online, and 25% of donors actually make a donation through their mobile phone. So try to reach donors where they are, make it easy and make it convenient for them to give to your organization. And even if you're not, you should, but even if you're not actively driving them to your donation pages, the fact that it is available on your website is going to give you some results as well. So a couple of things here. Feature a donation button prominently on your website. I'm going to show you some great examples we've seen from some of our customers that I think is fantastic. Make your donation page visually appealing and easy to find and navigate. Clearly identify various donor levels and their respective benefits. If you are able to show donors what impact their dollars are making, they're more likely to give and they're more likely to give more. Highlight a suggested giving level on your donation page. Encourage monthly giving. There's, a donor might not be able to give a one-time big gift, but those recurring gifts, those monthly gifts add up over time. Make sure your donation page is secure and mobile friendly. Again, 54% of donors give online, 25% give through their mobile phone. So whatever you have set up, make sure to test your donation forms, see what the experience is like from a donor point of view. So you see what they're going through and what pain points they might experience, what barriers there are to giving to your organization. And I love this last one. If you're not doing this yet, you can really turn supporters into fundraisers with peer-to-peer fundraising. And oh my gosh, we have seen so much creativity come from constituents and donors creating their own peer-to-peer pages. Here's a couple of samples from some of our customers, from some of our nonprofit customers. I love this here that there is a one-time and recurring donation option side by side. So if someone's on your donation page, they're going to give, maybe it prompts a little, it sparks a little something in their brain of, I could donate now, or I can make my donation be more sustainable, or I can give in a more sustainable way and sustain this organization's work. Love the prominent give button over here as well. Here's a sample of a peer-to-peer fundraising page that was created or by a Bloomerang customer. It doesn't just give them the opportunity to donate now, but it gives your supporters the opportunity to create a DIY fundraiser. So anyone can fundraise. We've seen this be from like someone is having a birthday, instead of having a party or instead of having gifts, they're just like, hey, I'm having a birthday, donate to this organization. Hey, there's a fun run. Hey, we're doing a bake sale. And it really allows your constituents to be creative and use their voice. And it's more authentic that way, right? Your potential donors are hearing from actual donors who support your organization, who support your mission. And it's proven to be quite successful. And yes, peer-to-peer platform is part of, we do have peer-to-peer capability with Bloomerang. I wanted to share and highlight again, I'll show you an example of how to build all these in Bloomerang, but I just love what these nonprofit customers have done on their website to put this into practice. So you can see here, for example, Pet Friendly Services of Indiana. I love that they have very clear impact statements that again speak to, instead of just highlighting the number, speak to what is the impact that this donation is going to make. I love the sample from Baton Rouge Gallery, where they really drive the recurring giving, where for them, it's membership based. So you can get monthly membership, you can get annual membership. So again, not just thinking of that one-time gift, but thinking of that longer term sustainability for your organization. And just for a bit of fun, but I love how this organization, Humane Society, has injected personality into their online presence and into their online donation form. By, instead of just saying donate now, they say donate meow. And sometimes it's little details like that that catch a constituent's or a donor's attention, and it makes them pay attention and gets them thinking about, how can I support this organization? And Bloomerang too, so you can see here, for example, let's look at my online giving form. So this is kind of the back end for it. A couple of things I wanted to point out here as well. You can really tailor, you can create as many forms as you need for your organization, and you can really tailor, where is that money or where are those dollars coming in from that donation form going to? So you can set your fund campaign appeal. So all gifts that come in through this form will automatically get tagged with that fund campaign appeal. Donors always have the option to give a recurring gift. Again, we don't just want them to give that one time, we want them to be lifelong partners and advocates and donors of our organization. So there you can prompt them to give a recurring gift. Give them as many different options to give as possible. Using Bloomerang payments, you can donate by credit card, you can donate by EFT. Give them the option to cover the fees. We found that a lot of donors take advantage of this option because it helps the organization, and if it's a small amount. They're already here to support your organization. They're more than willing to cover that little bit more so that more goes towards your organization. You can see the donation levels here as well. So this is where I'm saying, if you have an impact statement, if the donors know where their dollars are going, they're likely to give, and they're likely to give more. In my example here, if $30 can feed an orangutan for a week and $100 can feed an orangutan for a month, wait, there's about 4 weeks in a month. That would normally be $120, but almost feels like I'm getting a discount. By just giving a bit more, I can multiply that impact, and I might be more inclined to give on that higher level. I also love that you can connect some additional information via custom fields about your donors. Again, the more information and the more actionable, insightful data that you can get about your donors, the better, because you can really personalize that information when you communicate and when you engage with those donors. In my example here, for example, I'm asking, hey, maybe their employer has a matching gift program. I want to know because I want to be able to multiply my gift. Or if they don't know, maybe it prompts them to ask. Maybe if they know that their employer is going to match the gift, or if someone's going to match the gift, maybe they might give more. Maybe I want to ask, how did you hear about our organization? Why are you giving today? It starts that conversation going. So again, you can build those lifelong relationships. And all of these links, all of these will be linked in the slides as well. And of course, very, very important, record all of these engagement activities that you're doing, whether it's event attendance, volunteer activities, if they engage with you on social media, if they read your emails, or if you send them emails. Record all of these activities so you can track how you're doing. You can track to see how are these campaigns doing? Which engagements yield the best results? Where are the dollars coming from? Now, 42% of volunteers participate in a volunteer program before deciding to donate to an organization. So take a look at your volunteers, record those activities, and you can report on them. Which of your volunteers are donors? Right? Build up your presence on social media sites like Facebook or LinkedIn or Twitter or Instagram. Now, don't overwhelm yourself with having to manage and pay attention to too many, but take a look at where your donors are and see if that yields any results. And of course, analyze the data with reporting. How are you progressing towards your goals? What is the data telling you? Can you put more time into one bucket over another? If you make a change, what is the impact of that change to your outcomes? Which campaigns yielded the best results? Keep track of your donor acquisition and donor conversion rates. I know a lot of you don't have that documented right now, but this is a good place to start. I'm going to take a look at some of our questions here, but in the meantime, again, I wanted to remind everybody as we're coming up on time, we do have a promo you can take advantage of where you can buy now and pay in 2023. This is a limited time only. So if you buy Bloomerang from now and October 31st, we'll delay your first payment until January 2023. And I'll launch a poll as I'm answering some questions that we have here. If you'd like to follow up to learn more, please let us know. All right. There is a question here. How effective are membership models? Membership implies special gifts and opportunities, which means more work for our organization. What advice do you give regarding setting up this model? Is it worth the extra work? Fantastic questions. And for those of you who are using or utilizing a membership model, again, please feel free to chime in the chat. This is very tricky, right? Because one, what is your bandwidth to set all this up? We do have actually a separate webinar on starting a membership program with Bloomerang and getting that up and running. But realistically, what is your bandwidth to make this happen? If this is a program that you want or you are thinking of exploring, what goals would you have around it? I won't be able to answer for you if it's worth the extra work, but if you take a look at your goals, that will tell you if it's worth the extra work, right? Is it worth it if you get 10 members that yield X amount of dollars versus 30 members that yield X amount of dollars? You know what your work is worth and what work you're willing to put into it. Instead of a membership, maybe try starting with a recurring giving program, because there seems to be less of a commitment there. And it will kind of eliminate that implication of special gifts and opportunities. Try to start with a recurring giving program and see if your constituents and your donors respond to that, and see where you go from there. Great question. Thank you. Oh, Maria says, thank you for this great workshop. It's like a Christmas wish list for my organization. Thank you for that. Great ideas. Wonderful. Before I forget, I did want to share that I do have a lot of these resources, and they're all linked in the slides. So after today, everyone will receive an email with a link to the recording and the slides. And this is linked to the respective resources. So all of that is in the slides for you. And also letting you know that we do have upcoming webinars leading up to Giving Tuesday. So we have end of year giving strategy, Giving Tuesday strategies, Giving Tuesday matching gifts, as well as donor retention. The biggest thing I will say about Giving Tuesday for this series is if you can only do one thing from what we've shown you today to prepare for Giving Tuesday, get those online giving forms set up. It is a big giving day, especially online. So again, even if you're not doing a lot to promote Giving Tuesday within your organization, having that option be available for donors is going to be big for you. So get that online giving set up. Thank you, Lisa. Lisa says, have been using Bloomerang for years. Happy and glad these workshops are offered for free. We're happy to do them for you. We hope they help. Wonderful. Well, thank you so much. We have a question here from Melissa. Can you implement a membership model and recurring giving model program simultaneously? Absolutely. Just be careful of your bandwidth and appetite. Of course, you can do all of these things concurrently, but please take care of yourselves. Make sure it's realistic and doable for you and the members of your organization. Great comment here from Margaret as well. Thank you for sharing that outcome. I hope that inspires others to follow your example. Thank you so much again, everyone, for joining us today. We love doing these free resources and webinars for you. So thank you for coming. We hope that you picked up some tips that can help your organization, and we hope to see you in another webinar soon. Have a great rest of your day. Bye.